All right. Hope the sound is okay for this. All right. Well, this is my first live stream. To anyone who's watching after this goes live, then welcome. I hope you enjoy. This is my first time doing anything like this. Normally when I record my videos, I have the opportunity to go back and edit all of the silly things that I say. But in this case, I don't have that option. So I'm a bit nervous about it. It's pretty late over in the US and it's pretty early over in the UK, but here in Japan, it's about 5 p.m. So this is a good time for me, but it might not be a good time for the rest of the world. So hopefully some people join me today, but if they don't, I am prepared for that. Yeah. Hopefully a good schedule will come about once I get a little more used to this, and maybe I can set a time that's a little bit better for everyone. But it's kind of hard. Those three places where I am and where most wargamers are all kind of all over the globe. So who knows? Anyway, today what I'd like to do is get some work done on my Spire blocks over here. These are my latest little creation, and if you haven't seen the video on how I went about designing them, then you can check that out down in the description below. But these took a lot of work, a lot of time to get going, and they're not exactly finished yet. So I wanted to take this opportunity to kind of talk about them, as well as paint them up and see how they might look actually finished on the tabletop before I go into too much effort and too much work making sure the design looks good and all of that stuff. So yeah, that's what I'm going about today. Now I have 2 of these pieces here, as well as 4 of these little panels. They've all been primed already, and so they are ready to get going, but this is obviously not a full set. The idea behind these, if you haven't seen the video, is that the panels on the roof can be removed and they can stack. And by doing so, they can make a little building structure. My wargame Spire Seas is set in a flooded city, and so I wanted something that I could use to, players could use to quickly just, like Legos, build up a quick little tower that they could play on their tabletop. And so that seemed pretty simple, but I decided to take it the extra mile and add in these little carrying cases that would slot in underneath. So if you have a collection of miniatures for your game, for example, here is a crew of scavengers that I designed for Spire Seas. These guys are all magnetized, and the bases they come with are all magnetized as well. So you get a whole little crew in there. Make sure all of their weapons are actually inside. And then boom. Did someone fall off their magnet? The glue didn't stick on that one. Good example of where I might have just cut and redone that whole shot if this wasn't live. If the magnet is properly glued down, you can see that your little miniatures all stay in place there, which means that you can take this little block, throw it in a backpack or a box or whatever, and take it to wherever you're going to be playing. Yeah, and that's the main idea. So then once you're there, pop these out, build up a little spire on the Spire Seas, and start playing. Yeah. This is something I've been thinking about putting together for a long time, but never actually had the opportunity to do it because I knew it would take such a long time to do it. So that's why I spent kind of the past couple months or so making sure this was all set before releasing it. But now these are at least mostly done. Okay, bye-bye little crew. Now, for what I'll be working on today with these two, let me just make sure everything is working here. Okay. Now, what I'll be working on today with these two is just getting a quick layer of kind of stony, maybe a little metallic-y wash on top of it, as well as adding a little bit of moss for that nice overgrown aesthetic that I like for Spire Seas. I'm going to try to do it in such a way that when they are pushed together like that, it won't cause too many problems, especially thinking about the moss here. You can see these are a little wonky, these first few prints that I've made. They don't quite fit together perfectly, but that's okay. It's supposed to be a ruined building. Yeah. So I think I have a little bit of space to play around with the moss, but eventually, whether that's on live stream or not, I am going to have to figure out a way to really properly seal them in so that the moss doesn't just fall off every time you have it in your backpack or wherever. That's going to be a trick in and of itself, but for today I'm not going to worry about that too much. Just as long as these stack together, we'll call it good. All right. That probably doesn't sound very good on the stream, sliding it around like that. Okay. As for the colors I'm going to go with, I'm probably going to choose something basically similar to my dioramas that I've done in the past. Ooh, a little dusty there. This kind of mixture of kind of stony gray and a little bit of grayish brown, which I think turns into a pretty nice little concrete. And there's not a lot of texture on these blocks right now, but I might try my hand at doing a little bit of dry brushing as well, even though I'm not sure how much of that is actually going to stand out. There we go. Let's see. So with that in mind, my go-to colors are my Army Painter Necromancer Cloak and Dark Stone. This turns out a little browner than it looks here on the label. And this has a nice little bluish dark undercoat. And then I might add a little bit of uniform gray as well. And for highlights and dry brushing, a little bit of ash gray on top of that. And if this goes really quickly, or while I'm waiting for paint to dry on my Spire blocks and my little panels, I also have some of my little miniatures to paint up as well, just to make sure I have something to do. Okay, so let's get to it. I have two of these blocks here. One of them, I don't know how well you can see on camera, but one of them I've gone ahead and added some little nicks and scratches just with a hobby knife. Ooh, I didn't add any on that side. Just to see how much of a difference that makes between the two. So one of them has that, one of them doesn't. I think those will be really good for a little bit of dry brushing, but we'll see. So I'm going to start off with this basic one instead. Now, the idea behind starting some streams like this in general is mostly just to get an opportunity to chat about the game, about mechanics, about what people would like to see in tabletop skirmish games in general, while I'm working on stuff. I'm definitely not a great painter. I'm really not very experienced with it. So it's not like showing anyone any cool techniques or anything like that, at least for painting. But I do plan to also go over some Blender kind of videos and sculpting videos, and that'll be probably a little more tutorial-y, because I'm a little more familiar with that, as well as like 3D printing in general. But for the painting videos, it's more just relaxing. Let's see. I need to get those little ball bearings and put them in here. I still haven't done that. It's hard to get things like that in Japan. Ooh, yeah. No, don't fall off the table. There we go. Oh, this is a little stuck. Okay. I have a solution for that. My initial plan today was to have this live stream start much earlier, but unfortunately YouTube had some issues with me doing that. Oh, there we go. You probably heard that on the microphone. so I'm only now getting started with it. This is almost certainly a bad time to live stream tabletop stuff because barely anyone plays tabletop miniature games in Japan, and this is not a great time overseas. Alright, here we go. Let's try. This is a nice big brush. I've loaded it up. Let's just see what happens on this black. I don't know if you're even going to see much of anything. This is pretty watered down on purpose. But I don't want to leave too many streaks here either. So starting with the darker Necromancer cloak. It's already this black primer. I really wish I had an airbrush to do large pieces like this. For example, boats. These would be great to handle with an airbrush, but I don't have one yet, partly because my workspace is so small that I'm not sure where exactly I would put one. Plus the ventilation in here is not great at all. I know you don't have to be too worried about ventilation with acrylic paint, but you still have to be careful. I mean, that said, I do run a 3D printer in here, so a resin 3D printer. So it's not like I'm overly cautious to begin with. I do really like this Necromancer cloak color. I use it on a lot of my miniatures and my old terrain as well, which means I'm running out of it. If I have the opportunity to buy another bottle or a bigger bottle, I definitely would. There you go. You can probably tell, but I'm not being too careful about this. This is going to end up with like a mottled, weathered look on top of it anyway. So it's not like this has to be perfect coats. You know, I think the light shines right into the camera. It's a little difficult to tell the difference, maybe. You can see it a little bit. Okay. So that. Okay, so we're going to keep going here. Add a little bit more water. These large flat surfaces really make me wish for an airbrush. I've seen a couple good airbrushes for sale here in Japan for relatively cheap, including some little like compressed gas portable ones kind of designed for the smaller living spaces here. But I've heard not great things about those. Not terrible, just not great. So I'm a little hesitant to pull the trigger on them. Ooh. Obviously, like a compressor would be ideal. Especially if I'm going to do more terrain like this, or larger vehicles. Ooh, there we go. Nice. Nice consistency. Okay. That's what I'm looking for. Doing this, I'm already noticing that the consistency I would go for on a figure, on a miniature, it's going to be very different from what I'm going to want to use on these panels. Still learning a lot. Learning. Still constantly learning new things. Also, since, as I mentioned, I'm pretty much a novice painter, so if you have any ideas for tips or tricks for me to do better, then please let me know. Or any other hobby YouTube creators or hobby streamers that you would recommend as well. I do watch some of them. But again, I tend to focus on the 3D printing, 3D modeling side. Which reminds me, if you have anything that you would like to know about that aspect that I could highlight in a live stream or a video, then please let me know that as well. Once these guys are done, I do plan to go back to miniatures. Thinking of an idea for a new crew. The scavengers that I currently have are, I like them, I think they're cool, but they are a little more, they're not super post-apocalyptic-y. They're a little more sci-fi than anything, which is kind of the setting of Spire Seas. It is supposed to be more like, it's not supposed to be Mad Maxy fantasy, or Mad Maxy post-apocalyptic. It's intended to be post-apocalyptic, if that makes sense. A lot less, a lot less picking up things that people used a generation or two ago, or like, I guess, Mad Max, the same generation. And a lot more like kind of like a whole new civilization built on top of the previous one. Almost more fantasy sci-fi than post-apocalyptic, but technically post-apocalyptic in setting. Okay, I think that first side is pretty much dry, so I think I'm okay to move on to this one. So I'm not sure about the focus there. So yeah, so I am planning to start working on a new crew for Spire Seas. That crew would be much more like post-apocalyptic in design. Basically, the people who live on the spires themselves, outside of civilization. I was kind of hesitant to do that faction first, since the actual sculpting would probably be a little more difficult, a little more organic, and a little more difficult to capture that idea in sculpture. But now that I have a little more experience, I think I could probably get away with it at this point. And if the timing works better for people, then I'm hoping to get some live streams going during the design process and work on the design alongside viewers. Which I think would be quite fun. Almost done with this Necromancer cloak here, but I need a little bit more on my palette, but I don't want to pour out a whole bunch more. Ay. I have to get just a little bit more. So yeah, let me know if you think that's a good idea to do a little design live stream and then move into the sculpture. Oh no, I forgot which side was dry. Okay. That might be too watery. Yeah. All right. A little messy, but I think that's pretty good. Good enough, I should say, for these. Again, just like these are kind of prototypes for my design, this paint job is also kind of just a test to see what I need to do to make these look good. By the way, I hope when I'm talking over there, people can actually hear me. I don't know how loud I have to be heard on stream. I don't want to just be like muttering over in the corner or anything, just talking to myself like this. All right. That's good. I suppose while I wait for that to dry, I'm going to keep working in the same color, but I'm going to try to do one of these little flat panels. To do that, because I want to get the edges as well, I'm going to blue tack. Let's put it right in the middle. Blue tack the middle and pop it on my little paint holder. There we go. Great. If you've watched my videos, you may have seen this, although I've never really talked about it. I'm pretty proud of it. Just a little champagne cork with a little miniature base and a magnet on there, so that I can hold on to my minis, and I don't need to pay a whole bunch of money for a little plastic thing to do that. I could probably 3D print one of those, actually, now that I think about it. A little miniature holder. That's not a bad idea. I'm sure there's a lot already out there on the market, but it's not a bad idea at all. One nice thing about the moment you start actually painting these pieces, especially these 3D printed pieces, is when you first print them, you of course have some little print lines on them. That's pretty much unavoidable, depending on, you can kind of get around it a little bit by choosing where you place your flat panels. They only really show up on certain surfaces. But, I mean, you can only do so much of that before you start to just lose it. However, once you start putting down a little bit thicker actual acrylic paint, or sometimes even just the primer stage, those lines can pretty quickly go away. You start to see, especially if anyone doesn't have a 3D printer, when you have like raw resin prints, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but those lines cause it to reflect in a very interesting way. And so especially that part, once you add a little paint, it might seem a little strange at first to look at it, feel like you've goofed it up somehow. But once you add a little layer of paint, especially that shine goes away, and they start to look much more like finished, real things. There we go. That's the first paint on myself so far tonight. Okay. I'll leave that be for a little bit. All right. Not quite dry. Okay. I guess I'll start working on the next one. Oh, that's the wrong color. No wonder I couldn't find the color. That was close. Also, I do plan to print out more of these, but and I mentioned this in my video as well. If anyone has any ideas for what these side panels should actually look like, I'm thinking about thinning out these little bars between the panels, as well as maybe adding some details inside them. But the reason these are here in the first place is when you line up two, I don't want to touch that one. I'll use one of my funky off prints. When you line up two of these, obviously they're a little bit warped, so it doesn't quite work perfectly. But the idea is that this is the same thickness as this, and therefore, if any of them get lined up properly, you'll have this little, you'll still have an even distribution of your little panels, which means it does look a bit more like an actual single structure. Whereas if I just had one open side panel, you would have a little gap in here that would look a little weird. And since you can line these up four different parts, four different places, then that means I need to have these like three little bars in the middle. I don't need to, but that's what keeps it all consistent when put together. So this is just my first kind of rough try at that design, but I'm sure there's a better way to make that work. I could pop these out there. They don't need to be here. They only need to be here, where... Sorry about touching the mic. Where little pins are going to go in that need to be flush. So there needs to be a little divot in here, but this could just be 2 divots and then flat-ish panels on all the sides. But once it's flat, it means you can't design out from it. Like I said, this this thing took me a couple months to put together, and a big part of that is just overthinking every little detail like that until I almost couldn't get work done because something would come up and I'd say, no, that can't work like that because this needs to go there and that needs to be here. So I might just need to not worry so much about it, but it would be nice if I could find the perfect solution instead. Ooh, getting some bubbles in there. There we go. Much cleaner. I'm also realizing that painting might not, especially these large pieces, might not be the best thing to stream, since you're seeing me go from black to dark gray over the period of, what has it already been, like 40 minutes? Hopefully it's at least relaxing. And it's relaxing for me, for sure. There we go. I know it's everyone has a different thing that they like to just do to relax, but there is something special about just painting little miniatures that's very meditative. I need more paint on the palette still. I'm burning through this bottle. But that was expected. Fortunately, individual bottles are not too expensive. Although, like I said, very hard to find any miniature specific paints in Japan. Japan has a huge modeling community. I'm sure people know about like Gunpla and all that stuff, but what I didn't know before I got here was just how big the like historical modeling community is here, and things like the things that I wouldn't think are that popular, like passenger jetliners, are surprisingly easy to find here. I feel like in the States we tend to focus on, if we're doing models at all, it tends to be more military based, which kind of makes sense. And that is present here for sure. But often surprised to see just how much attention to detail people put in their, what I would consider just kind of like regular models. Obviously cars, all that stuff, but also like freight ships and jet liners and tractors and all kinds of stuff. The great thing about that for me is that it means that diorama and hobby supplies are very easy to find here, and very high quality as well. However, not all of that translates well into 28mm scale. Some of it does, for sure. Like my flocking here, this stuff is great and very cheap. But a lot of the other stuff is just not meant for little tiny people. Most of the community here does, if they do people at all, it's usually like N scale train people, where you just dollop on a couple little colors and call it good because they're so tiny to begin with. Or they are full on figurine size figures. And so the techniques for painting those are also different. However, I do think miniatures are starting to become a little more popular here, thanks to some of the larger miniature game companies starting to branch into Japan. They're still not really for games, though. They're just for painting, for display. I guess my point in all of that is I really should be trying the paints for, this is a bad example. This specific thing I could probably find a really much better paint for. But when painting miniatures, I tend to go out of my way to find Western brands for the acrylic paints and all that stuff, because they tend to have a variety of colors that is just, and an ease of use that is just not so common for other model colors here. That red on the edge. Thank you, Julie. Good to see you. I think, Julie, I think you've never seen me actually paint before. Seen the before and after, but not so much the during. There we go. That's a nice coat. There we go. So one of the big differences, well, hopefully I can show it someday, but one of the big differences between the paint, this Army Painter paint, and the Japanese brands is most of the Japanese paints are not purely water-based. So that smell that can really stink up a house, that like varnishy smell, I try to avoid it because the house is so small. Just black. This is dark gray that I'm adding on to the black. But I know it does kind of look like just black right now. Ooh, that's too much water. Ooh, that's too much water. I messed that one up. This will make a lot more sense with the next coat of paint. I promise. I don't know if you can see. Black, gray. Black, gray. So to explain why these are black to begin with, one of the nice things about a black primer is that that first coat is all black because if this paint is not clear, or if I even like brush it off a little bit, it's at least black underneath, which makes it seem like a shadow from far away. So if I do miss any spots, it kind of ends up looking like it's just a shaded spot or a shadowy spot instead of being like a gray or white spot underneath that looks like plastic. We're going to leave that there. I need to let that dry out before I cover it properly. Actually don't know if I've shown off the spray paint yet. This is Mr. Finishing Surfacer, 1500 block. This is my first time using this primer. And to go back to Japan versus the US, getting a primer for miniatures here, like a Citadel primer, is really expensive because it's imported. So this is the Japanese hobby primer brand. But for example, when you want to use a primer and then another primer on top of it, you sometimes have to be a little careful about all of the details of what's in this. And so I tried to ask the staff about using a black primer and then a white primer on top of it. And the staff here in Japan just looked at me confused because they would never do that. They would never put black primer and then white primer, a zenithal highlight, you would call it in the States. They just didn't know what I was talking about. So that's one of the difficulties being out here in Japan. Oh, hi Ed. Yeah. Hello, welcome to the stream. This is my first live stream, by the way. So I apologize if it's not, things go wrong or anything like that. But yeah, these are the little boxes that I am painting now. I just got my first base coat on of dark gray on top of a black primer. And I think this is good to touch. Yeah, okay. If you've seen those videos, you might notice that this little roof panel fits on right there. So that's what I'm working on next. Also, let me know if the music, if you can hear the music, and if it's too loud, or if my voice is not too loud. Thank you. Thank you. I am nervous today, if you can't tell. But thank you for joining. Thank you for watching. All right. Hopefully everything looks okay too. This is my first time using all of these cameras in this way. All right, we're gonna put a little more dark gray, and then I promise I'm gonna add some lighter colors. No music? Here, I can hear music now. Can you hear that? Thank you. Thank you. That's good to hear. Also, this music is my personal preference, but if you enjoy something else, please let me know. Oh. Again, this, I think I need more paint on my palette there. Okay, perfect. I don't want it to be too loud either. It is, I know, probably very late. So I don't want to be using loud, obnoxious music. This is meant to be more chill. Yeah, too much water. Far too much. Ooh, that looks nice. So Ed, do you have any questions about the design of these boxes? I've kind of been talking to myself about them for a little while. But if you have any questions, then let me know. Yes, 2 a.m. Yes. My plan is to do these a little earlier in the future, for sure. Although, I kind of like the idea of a late night hobby stream. I mean, personally, that sounds kind of relaxing to me, but it's definitely not everyone's cup of tea. Yeah, right. These, if you haven't finished the video yet, these are very much kind of prototypes. So this is just a little sample of what these should end up looking like at some point in the future. All right. I think, speaking of doing a little sample, I think my main boxes are dry, and this needs to dry on the stand. So I think it's time to add some darker or some lighter colors as well. Mentioned at the beginning of the live stream, but what I like to use is a little bit of dark stone, which has a little bit of brown in it, and then add a little bit of lighter browns as well. Kind of mix those together. Splotch it on for a little bit of dirt, grimy look. Ooh. It's been a while since I've done terrain, huh? This needs to get poked out. There we go. Also not sure if you can hear my cat meowing. Oh yeah. Good. That for Blender, those startup settings, figuring that out took a long time, but once I had that, that was one of the big obstacles jumping over to getting started on Blender, is making sure you have all those settings. Yeah. He's hungry. Making sure you can hear all of, or sorry, not hear the cat. Make sure you can have all those settings in place in Blender. Once they are, and you can just jump in and start modeling, that is the big game changer. At least it was for me, to actually getting work done in it. It's kind of an opaque software, probably because it's open source. But Blender has so much in it, and like 3D modeling, especially 3D modeling for 3D printing, is just one of those things. So nailing down those settings, very important. But once you do, you're off to the races. Thank you for watching those videos, by the way. And my cat, Barney, he usually eats this time, so he might meow more. Hope that doesn't bother anyone. Probably can't see at all what I'm doing over here, but so I've got this dark gray brown. I'm mixing in a little bit of lighter brown into it. I don't want it to get too light because I don't want it to stand out. I want this to look like one piece of stone or concrete. I think that's good. And then instead of just brushing it on there, I'm going to kind of splotch it on. Splotch it on. With one of my cheaper brushes. Okay, let's see. I think this one is good. Especially like some areas where dirt might kind of build up, like these corners here. Any little gaps? It's getting nice and dirty. These spire blocks, these are meant to be kind of like sitting out in the middle of the ocean. So I don't imagine like too much dirt and dust. It's not like a Mad Maxy kind of vibe I'm usually going for, but kind of like a wet, muddy look more so. These kinds of things, these large terrain pieces, these really start to look good once you introduce some flocking to them and make them nice and mossy and overgrown. Until then, they do end up kind of looking like gray blocks. That it's sufficiently muddy down in the corner there. Oh, my poor cat. He does not understand why I am not just getting up and feeding him right now, as he would expect. I'm gonna add a little more dirt patches up onto the side here, but try and be much more sparse about it. I've gotten a lot of comments. Yeah. So, as I was about to mention, I've gotten a lot of comments that these are shipping containers. They weren't supposed to be shipping containers, but they do look a lot like shipping containers and can certainly be used in that way. That's a good idea. Oh, it totally fits that they would be. Just like a stack of shipping containers left out in the flooded ocean. I might try and put that on here, although, oh, okay, scratching is too much. Hey. To get a nice little graffiti or little like marker, little design or something, I would probably want to use a stencil, which I don't have on hand, but it's a good idea, and I might try a little freehand once I've got the rest of these colors down. I think that looks pretty good. It's the bad part about having a microphone that picks up a lot of noise, is that the cat gets picked up very clearly. So this one, I've gone ahead and gouged out some little damage marks. So those I might put a little more of this brown on there as well. For people interested in more of the Blender modeling side, I do plan to do live streams of those. I'm much more comfortable with Blender than I am with painting miniatures, much more experienced with it. This is not meant to be tutorially because I don't know much about painting. And for the next stream, I'll probably be working on some new characters for Spire Seas. Also, this little blotching technique, I've tried using sponges before. Those tend to look really cool, but I don't seem to have the right kind of sponge. The sponge that I've used before hasn't really worked as well. I don't know about just the texture or the material that they are. Doesn't seem to match what I've seen online. So I've got to kind of get the right sponge to do that. FDM printed houses, I I've seen some good results, but I would worry dry brushing those because of all the lines. There are some lines here you can probably see. That's just a printing error. Hopefully dry brushing works well on them, but I can see it getting a little too much. Yes, hopefully I'll be doing live streams much earlier than this in the future. My cat obviously doesn't like this time slot either. Okay. All right. It's time for a quick cat break. Do you want to come on up? Or do you just want food? I hope you all like cats. He might be joining the stream for a little bit because I don't want him to be too loud. Although that means getting hair on my miniatures. Fortunately. Okay. That's a nice little bit of color. We're going to try it on one of these floor panels as well. For these ones, I can probably ditch the handle. Hungry? Is the cat hungry or wants attention? A little of both. I can usually distract him a little while. But I think mostly he's just hungry. Yeah. He didn't used to do this, but then the neighbor's cat started meowing late at night and getting food for it, and I think he learned from the other cat to do it, which I am not so happy about. But he seems to be enjoying his position here, so. Can you hear him purring on the mic? Really? That must mean he's enjoying it. All right, got some brown there. And I like your suggestion of doing a little graffiti. So I'm gonna try that. What color should I use? Does anyone have any ideas? I'm thinking blue or pink, or on this gray. I think on this gray, a dark purple or a blue might look nice, or just a yellow. Yellow. Alien purple. Dark blue. Or just white would also look good, or mummy robes, a little off-white. I'm going to think about that. Okay, I'll think about Think about that and let me know what color you think would work well. You see those in there. In the meantime, I'm going to add a little more rustiness to this. So the brown rust doesn't come in one color, even though this is dry rust. That's true. I should have reference, but I wasn't sure about the graffiti yet. The rust, I have mental reference. Rust doesn't really come in one color. It kind of like gets lighter. And so I like to add a little bit of this dry rust into the brown I've used when I'm doing rust. And then I have like a nice variation in color. And also this one in particular is supposed to be kind of like an effect paint. So depending on how much water I add, it's also going to change what happens to it. Ooh, I've been meaning to try some of those like texture, like proper rust texture effects from Vallejo. I love painting rust on things. So this, I'm going a little overboard on that patch, and then I'm going to come back in with some lighter colors afterwards. For these other parts, I'm just adding a little bit here and there. And tends to build up a lot in these little crevices and cracks as well. Maybe a little where water might gather. These are meant to be out in the middle of the ocean for hundreds, thousands of years. So realistically, they might have just rusted away completely, but that wouldn't be functional to make little boxes out of. So taking a little bit of liberties there, but should have plenty of rust on them. And I kind of imagine this being kind of like ferro-concrete. Artist Opus had a good video. I will check that out. I want to get more rust. These are meant to be kind of like ferro-concrete, so not like straight steel. Otherwise, I think it would just have rusted away completely. Oops, I got a lot more lighter rust right there than I intended to. I'm going to have to turn that into a happy little accident. Bob Ross it. I don't know if it's a happy little accident yet, but I'll try and see it that way. Maybe a little bit of like streaking down the sides as well. Thank you, Ed. Ed, you mentioned you had the FDM printer as well. I would love to see how these turn out on FDM. I don't know if they would be very different as a resin printer. They're obviously, that's what I have, so they're designed to work on the resin printer. But the STL itself should function on FDM just fine. if they work much better on FDM, I might have to invest in one myself. Those bubbles. Okay. I will add a little bit of wash after this as well. That is especially good for. I have like a panel streaking bottle, Japanese bottle. I mentioned this earlier, but like the materials that they use here in Japan often can be just so different that it actually starts stripping the paint. So I haven't had the opportunity to really use very much of it. But the Army Painter washes seem to do just fine. That's a little too brown. Let's make that a little more rusty. Let's get some in the bottom cracks as well. Oh, there's already some water in there. How I wonder how it compares in terms of like how often you get failed prints and things like that. I've heard people say about FDM that it takes a lot more effort to make everything print cleanly. Resin takes a lot more effort to like clean and to deal with afterwards. Which for me is kind of like I'm kind of okay with that part. The actual getting it to print is what I'm not looking forward to. Ooh, there's a nice little crack. Get some nice rust in there. Rust in all the crevices. Try not to go too overboard either. Some of this I say as I start to smash the brush in there. Okay. This is just a test. You know what? I probably should have done any graffiti marks before putting rust on, now that I think about it, but... So, actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and do that right now. Once you get to know your printer, that stuff starts to become a lot easier. Like I said, I guess I'm kind of the opposite. I know pretty quickly what went wrong when a print fails, whether it's an issue with the FEP, the bed, or the file itself. I can usually tell pretty quickly. It's a good example. This line here is on both of them, which means it's a support problem. That needs to be looked at. And that could be a support problem in conjunction with my printer, but that's where that failure is happening, is in the supports not keeping it straight. Yes. Resin for minis specifically, I think a lot of people who are making minis, they do really well with their sculpture. They know sculpture very well, but they're not always making their miniatures for resin printing in terms of like the sizes, the angles, the cutoffs, and things like that. I have a little bit of experience with casting, and you can tell the people who made hey people, what's up? You can tell people who have made cast miniatures before and then transitioned to resin printing versus the people who've done 3D modeling purely first and then are transitioning to printing 3D models. It's pretty easy to tell from the design of the model which kind of person they are, which kind of designer they are. The cool thing is that those worlds are getting smashed together, but okay, you know what? It's time for a little graffiti. I will take your advice and do a quick reference Google search. A lot of this graffiti is way cooler than I could actually pull off. Okay, that's a good idea. All right. I'm gonna do some like official markings on one corner. Ooh, that's a lot. Oops. And then I'm gonna add a little graffiti to the other side. What's it say? Get it nice and wet. It's still maybe too dark. Okay. This is my first time trying this, by the way, so I hope it works out. I'm gonna do right here in this little section here, we're gonna do something like, ooh, that doesn't look very good. Right away, giving up. Did I just do that? Okay, I knew that was probably going to happen at some point during the stream, where I forget to reset my camera. Ugh. Sorry. Thank you for the warning, Ed. I knew that was going to happen at some point. I need to figure out a better way to handle that. First stream problems. Ooh, I don't like the look of that at all. Thank you. Recently figured out the reason that DSLRs do that is because they don't want to pay taxes on them as if they're film cameras. So they just make sure that you can't film for more than 30 minutes with them, which is annoying. Oh, there we go. That's what I wanted. It's a little faded white. I don't know how that's going to look. Unit 37. Okay, I think that works. That could work for a shipping container or like a regular building. I kind of imagine these being like in the setting being like what do you call it, prefab buildings, where they just ship you like, this is your living room section, this is your kitchen dining section, and just like stacking them together in universe. And then so that's why they're all kind of sectioned off once they get broken apart. So one type of spire would be just like a bunch of unit blocks like this. Okay. And then that is going to get a little bit of rust on top of it as well. Bleeding through just a little hint of that. Okay, we're good on that. Okay, that definitely helps it pop. I think next time I paint one of these up, I'm gonna have a graffiti stencil ready to go. But for now, let's try just a quick little, use purple. I like purple. Nice. Okay. For that, we're gonna do just like a little drawing. That's a great idea. I was thinking about making just some little greeble bits that could slot in here as you like, or something similar. But I feel like just any piece of trash, piece of plastic, some giant container, you just greeble it up enough, and it makes for some great sci-fi scenery. Ed, you are getting graffitied on here. Thank you for watching my stream. Ed was here. I don't even know if you can see that, but it's supposed to be kind of 100 years old anyway. Oh, that's kind of too light. I should check for some of those myself. Let's see if I can add them on here. No, that's too light. I'm going to give you or too dark. I'm going to give you a lighter color to go with it. That's actually a good idea for a video as well. Those little greebles, they're a great hard surface blender project for getting yourself into 3D printing. Basically anything where you can pretty much guarantee that one side is going to be up most of the time and you don't have to worry about getting print marks underneath. Great thing to model out and print. It's one of the problems with miniatures. You always have, like, unless you're supporting into the feet, and even then you're also supporting under up into something else, you're always going to be getting some little support marks. Need to make this a little lighter. There we go. Make it look more like spray paint as well. As you can probably tell right now, I'm not great at freehand painting. But I'll get better at it, I'm sure. There you go. That you can actually see. All right. We're going to get some other... That's actually a great idea. I'm just going to graffiti the hell out of this, and then we're going to move on to adding some grime and then some flocking, and then I think we're just going to finish just this one block today. We'll call it done. That's a good point. Most people tagging aren't that great at freehand painting. That's an excellent point. The Google image searches, apparently those people are all very, very good at freehand spray painting. Thank you very much, Helly, and welcome. For this one, I knew the basic formula of gray, brown gray, rust, and then I'm going to be adding some flocking later. But the graffiti was an idea from the viewer Ed here, which I like. This is a great idea. This yellow is... All of these colors are not post-apocalyptic-y enough. Need to mix in a little darker. Yeah, there we go. Dark gray yellow. Okay. What is this going to be? This is going to be a smiley face. It's going to be a big... big emoji smiley face. There we go. I'm trying not to feel like I just ruined this, but I think I think it kind of works. Yeah, yeah, it does. It does work well with the idea that these are just like have been out there in the water for a long time. Who knows who's come by and added a fresh little tag to them. Helene, do you have any ideas for a graffiti tag? Got one more good prime little face here. Ooh, yeah, that's a good idea. Add a little rust over all of those. Gotta make sure it's nice and thin down rust though. I gotta be careful with this. That's a great idea. Okay, but it's also hard because now I have to come up with it. But some sort of kind of gang symbol, or it could be just like a scav crew symbol as well. Oh, the rust makes the smiley face look much better. Good idea. Especially, let's get that rust like just all in that corner there. All right. Ooh, that's a much better idea. These days, you Google search graffiti on a shipping crate, and they're like beautiful paintings, which is cool. Okay. We're going to do that. Color sounds like it should be dark red. That doesn't look dark. Shoot. Apparently I haven't used this red long enough, or much. Yes. Sometimes somebody decides to tag. Ooh, just the mic probably shook. I'm sorry about that. Sometimes people decide to tag the beautiful paintings with their own little tag instead. Oh, that's a good search. I bet you wouldn't find them here in Japan. I haven't seen many tagged tagged rail cars here in Japan. But I'm sure I could find some online. Okay. We're going to mix that red with a little bit of dark gray here. Just a hint. And that'll make for a very good. Got that dragon red. Make a good little anarchist. That's a good. I'll just put the anarchy A. That would work. Oh, good, perfect. There we go. That's what I need. I think that's gonna go right in here. We'll get a little dark gray. Yeah, nice dark red. Washed out red. Okay. Before I lose the camera again, refocus that. That is a good idea. Those I could probably just print out for next time, especially if I have an airbrush. That's definitely something to look for. Well, I already put that down. I should have Google searched what the Anarchy A looks like. I think I have an idea of it. And ditch the circle though. Okay. Just big old red A on there. Here, like especially for speaking for decals. Thank you. I can imagine whoever painted it in universe didn't have a great idea of what it looked like either. That's the solution to that. Speaking of decals out here, I really should have like just a set template of like spray paint numbers and letters that I can just pull out and put on anything. Get that nice crossbar. But then like with a stencil like that, I could just slap in some things on all of these really quickly. Getting that perfect look is kind of too much for this little prototype. Unit set 37 I think got kind of close, but okay. Add a little rest to that. Oh, I need to wait for that to dry, actually. All right, next step here is going to be letting it completely dry and then adding some flocking. Which is by far my favorite step. This is model railroad flocking. I have a couple different colors. The whole thing cost me just a couple hundred yen, a couple dollars. And this stuff makes for like perfect moss overgrown look. Normally I just use a little bit of watered down PVA glue in this, and that gets me, here's one of my older pieces, that gets me most of that way. But you'll see here I did add a little bit of other stuff underneath. And I do think adding a little bit of dark green under where you're going to put it helps it to really, you can't really see that. You can see here where there's no color underneath, it kind of just looks a little out of place. So I think I'm going to add a little bit of mossy green first. A little bit of green skin. Just lightly. Oh shoot, I need to wash this whole thing too. That happens before. I'm gonna get a nice strong wash. Yeah. Especially those like those old wooden crate styles. You're saying like that where it was kind of hand rolled, hand painted. I feel like I could probably get away with something like that, like if this was someone painting it. But to get that sci-fi feel, I feel like a decal would also work really well. Okay. Now, sometimes when adding these washes, if the paint isn't very dry, get a little cracking. Don't worry, it's way late there. This might crack the painting a little bit, the paint underneath a little bit, but I feel like that's kind of fine in this situation. This is a little bit of strong wash from Army Painter, and I'm just gonna slop it on there. We'll see what happens. Especially, I want this to kind of streak down under, so I'm gonna make sure I get it like thick. All good? I think I got a weird little disconnect problem. Great, perfect. Okay, thank you. And thank you for hanging out a lot. Makes my day. Yeah, this is nice and grimy. Perfect. Thank you, Hellion. That was weird. I don't know. I've had the problem with the camera before, but that was just a disconnect. This is kind of a test stream, so make sure everything goes well. So thank you for your patience. Okay, we're just griming the hell out of this here. And then I should have said, I said earlier that like the step that really makes it come to life is the overgrown flocking, which is true. But before that, a little bit of brown wash. Ooh, always really like makes it pop. And I said at the very beginning of the stream that I might try some dry brushing as well, but I don't know how much I'm actually gonna, how many like edges I'm gonna catch on this piece. So I'm not sure how worth it that is. I wonder if I should just cover these whole panels. Is that too dark, too grimy? Make sure I get it to puddle up. Yeah, we're just going to paint these things. Keep it very light in those parts. Ooh, that looks really good on the white. And it makes that rust a little nicer too. I've tried doing the rust both ways. Thank you, Ed. I'll try and do the stream earlier in the future. Keep an eye out for that. Thank you for your time, and hope you enjoyed. think that looks good. And we'll remember Ed was here. Yeah, this is a prime streaming time for me, but it's definitely not great for the rest of the world. It's dark. Yeah, that wash always helps it look really cool. Or cooler, I should say. So if this was like a deserty structure, I would definitely take some time to go through and dry brush all of the little edges and make it look really like sun-baked and washed out. And I might still end up doing that for most of these crates in general. But for today, I think I'm gonna pretty quickly after this dries move on to some flocking. And I've been wanting to experiment with some like resiny or like gloss varnish effects to make it look kind of wet as well. If you look at like something sticking out of the water though, like a pier or something like that, it actually is like kind of salty and dry. Now that I think about it, that might be a good step. What do folks think? A little dry brush is in order, or just mossy green? Ooh, nice little streak there. I get it to do that. Oh, getting some streaking on the side there. All right, we're gonna let that sit. Yeah, this is the first block. Yes. I've been kind of saving this to try it out on the stream. But I think now that I'm realizing how long it takes, I might just quickly knock out a couple on my own at another point in time. But I'm also a little worried about the design. I want to redesign these so that I know exactly what the side panels are going to look like before I just print out a whole bunch of them. I don't know. They do kind of look like shipping containers, which kind of works. I could just make a shipping container version and then also do a more sci-fi building-y version after that as well. And then I could just print a bunch of these shipping container ones and get that working. I also do want to get back to modeling, 3D modeling characters before too long. Okay. All right. I want that to dry. I want it to dry faster. Most of painting is waiting for paint to dry. My experience. There's my green. I want to kind of match this green as close as I can. Maybe I could add like a little bit of yellow as well. Let's see here. You know what? I'm going to try it on one of these little panels. Be a good little sample base as well. Double paint shake. Ah. Okay. Oh, that's like way more neon-y green than I was expecting. Did I just need to shake it up even more? Nope, that's the color. Okay. Definitely need to darken that. So once I do go back to modeling, oh, that was way too much. Ooh. Modeling more characters again. I'm gonna add a little brown to make that soften that up. My plan is to make some. Once I can get a full set of these, I think it'll look really cool on the table. But this is so post-apocalyptic-y, and my current scavengers are not quite apocalyptic-y enough. So my next set of characters are going to be much more like scrap steel and rags. I think I need to get ball bearings. So that I can properly shake these paints. Aye. I'm getting a lot of the paint thinner mixed in. Ooh, that's way too much on the brush there. Okay. This is a lot of green. I regret my choices. One concern I have with these using a little bit of flocking is that they're supposed to stack together. I don't know how much physical height just a little bit of flocking is going to add. Hopefully it doesn't prevent you from storing them as efficiently. A little bit of lighter color in there too. Get a little mixture of colors. Yeah, just gotta try and experiment as much as possible. This has been one long, arduous experiment all on its own. But that's kind of what this whole channel is about in general, is experimenting and trying out new things to try and make a cool, interesting world. Okay. I feel like that's a little saturated, that green. It needs a little more dark brown or dark gray. I just want it to dry more quickly. I am nervous about putting this green directly on the container right away. You know, while this is drying, that might be a good time to try a little bit of dry brushing. I'm gonna grab a piece of paper and got like a little makeup brush. If anyone watches Uncle Adam's videos, this idea came from him, and it has worked out for me in the past. But I'm still not very good at it. So, let's see. I do want kind of a light gray dry brush, maybe with a little bit of brown. I'm going to mix it with that white there. Okay, so there's my uniform gray. Oh man, all of these paints are a little stuck. There we go. Okay, a little bit of gray. And a little bit of brown. And mix it together. This is way more paint than I need for dry brushing, but that's okay. Kind of darkened it a little bit. Yeah, especially when it comes to paints, I'm mostly experimenting. Blender has been more my home for the past year or so. Okay. Not very comfortable with my dry brushing technique, but let's give it a shot. Gonna get a little bit. Wipe off most of the paint, and just didn't wipe off enough of the paint. I'm gonna regret that. There we go. It's fine. No problem. Still have too much paint on there. This is something that everyone says is very, very easy, and I have had so much trouble with. Like every hobby channel I watch, they're basically like, yeah, and all you have to do is do a little bit of dry brushing. And I'm like, great. Ugh. That's not bad. That's not bad. Really just have to get like all the paint off. I don't even know if that's showing up much on camera. Probably see it angled a little bit better. Okay. I probably should be using paper towels. That has seemed to work out better for me in the past, but it's all right. Ooh, it's still a little strong, but it's okay. And then get the edge here. Yeah, okay. Okay. That's starting to work out. Definitely creates like that little like edge, little light on the edge that helps give everything a little more depth. Ooh, that's still wet, huh? That would not be dry brushing. Let's see what happens here. He's a maniac on the brush. Getting just the edge. Oh, that's nice. That's satisfying. Okay, I can tell why people are into dry brushing. It is very satisfying. I'm just gonna knock that off. I think that looks fine. And on this piece where I've added these little like chips and dings, dry brushing down on those is gonna add a little A little bit of light right on the edge of each one. Just turning out cool. Okay. All right, all right. I'm liking it. Okay. I think that's a good little experiment. This is an experiment day in more ways than one. Okay, I'll wash that later. Now this you know what? While we're experimenting, I'm gonna try another little experiment here. I'm gonna dab off the paint. See if that leaves a nice little texture. Ooh. I think that looks pretty good. Can you see that okay? Yeah, that's doing what I kind of thought it would do, which is leave a little bit of, take off mostly from the middle, and it's leaving a little like ring around the outside, which is just fine by me. I don't know. Ooh, that's too much. Quick toothpick to the rescue. Get that out of there. Cool. Okay. I think that's good. We're going to try next a little bit of glue mixed with water, and we're going to get some of this flocking on there. After that, I think we're going to call it a night. Okay, where's my other cup? Here it is. Now, I could just put the glue straight on, but I want it to flow a little bit better. So I'm going to add a little bit of water. And I really don't need too much. There we go. That's too much water, probably. I'm just going to pour that back in. Don't worry, I'm not going to drink this water later. I hope. Hope I don't mix that up. Okay. Now I've got to get my glue brushes. Quick hot tip, keep your glue brushes distinct from your non-glue brushes. Okay. Pull out the little flocking platform, and then wherever I have that green, it's going to give me a nice little pattern to pop down my glue on. I could probably mix a little bit of green just straight in with the glue. That would be a good thing to experiment with. I'll pop that right there. Is that visible? Stay here. It's my favorite part. I can get this thing open. There we go. I usually try and mix a couple different colors, but for this, it's okay. Let's see if I can how to best record this. Yeah, that green is a little dark. A little darker than I'd like. Or a little saturated. I don't know if you can see very well, but you kind of see where the green paint is sticking out a little bit. I'm going to have to do something about that before I move on to the main piece, but the flocking itself looks pretty good. That'll go right up there. Don't get premature gluing. Okay. So now we're going to do that same process over here. We're going to get a little bit of green, a little bit of the brownish part of the green. Keeping it light. We're going to blush that on some parts. Now the moss, like the rust, is going to follow physics a little bit. So it's going to pool up here in the bottom of these little crevices, which is good because that's where it's not going to touch any other pieces that are next to it anyway, which is what I want. But then it's also going to kind of grow up and over a little bit as well. It's going to hang out. That's too desaturated. So let's see here. It's all about finding that balance. I think I add a little yellow, actually. Let's try that. That's not bad. Okay. A little bit of that up there. And especially like these chunky little bits. That's where I really want to make sure we get moss growing in there. Okay, I think that's good. Don't want to cover up the A, so even though the grass, the moss itself doesn't care, I do. We'll add a little bit, and then a little bit beneath it. There you go. The other good thing about doing this little base layer in green is going to be that if the moss does fall out, it still at least has that same overgrown look to it. Time for my paint. Yeah. Okay. All right. Ooh, my paint water is looking really great right now. This definitely helps. We're almost there. We're almost there to a single finished Spire block. To be fair, this is the first one, so after that it's going to be much easier. I think we'll do one side at a time here. There we go, love the flocking, love it. Oh no, I missed the, I missed the paper. It's okay. I don't know if you've ever smelled flocking, but you might like it, but the one bad side about it doesn't particularly smell great. There we go. What a difference that makes. Probably should have some growing up over here, but I think that's okay. All right. On to the next one. Try and rescue this flocking. I do wonder sometimes, like in the world of Spire Seas, this is, and in my mind at least, this takes place in like the Central Valley of California. And I wonder how much it would be really fun to like double check which types of moss grow there and try and like replicate that at some point, but that might be going a little overboard. Let's see here. There we go, that gentle flock. It does look really cool when it like comes out when it bundles up and kind of comes over, but I do want these to still like stick next to each other. Still see the A? Okay. We're A-okay. Okay, just two more. Ooh. That's when I put that flocking glue to the test here. Let's see. I'm not gonna risk that just yet. Try it. This is what I was going to do with this little corner in the first place, was just fill it full of glue. Let's see about that, if that works. I recently played the game Titanfall 2, the campaign mode, and if you're looking for some inspiration for like overgrown buildings and like mossy sci-fi concrete, that is a great reference. You know what? I'm just going to cover up my little botched dry brush as well. There we go. No one will know. There we go, that's much better. I really should have like a proper applicator for this at some point. My finger tapping the plastic bag is not very accurate or sophisticated. There we go. All right. The back is still okay. Yeah, that's still okay. All right, just one more. You know what? I've been like keeping the moss off of the graffiti. But this one, we're just gonna go for it. We're not gonna cover the whole thing though. Otherwise I feel like I wasted my time with that one. I'm gonna get a little bit in this nook here. Yeah. There we go. All right. And there we have it. Ooh, knocked off a little more. Okay. Whew. There we go. Flocking is done. So, I think that pretty much covers it for this painting session. Took a lot longer than I thought it would to cover one block, but now that I know what I'm doing a little better, know where to go, I think it won't take too long to knock out a whole bunch of these in a row. It would be a lot easier if I had an airbrush, but that's okay. Overall, you can kind of see that. I don't know how well this is going to show up on the webcam side, but there it is. A nice little overgrown spire block section. And I'll probably have to spray paint a bunch of varnish on here to really seal it up and make sure it stays flocked. But once that happens, I think we'll be good. Now, this, once I have all of these sections piled up, just if you haven't seen these all together. Woo! This is going to go on top of something like this. Boom. Now imagine both of those all overgrown together and graffitied up as well. I think that's going to look really cool. All right, that makes me excited. I've been staring at these in like plain resin brown for a long time, and it feels good to finally see one all painted up and looking like it should. All right. Whew. Okay. All right, everyone. Well, that's that. I think I'm going to call it here. This has been my first little live stream. So, folks who are watching, thank you for joining. Thanks for everyone who left a comment and mentioned something. And yeah, hopefully in the next time I do this, I'm going to find a slightly better time when it's not in the middle of the night over in the US. But this week it just didn't work out like that. So next time, look forward to something a little bit earlier. Somewhere probably around 10 o'clock Japan time, 6 o'clock California time, something like that. Anyway, for now, I'm going to relax for the rest of my Sunday night. And thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone. Peace.